And if that's not enough for you, you can do the W example. And this is an example of storyboarding. So usually you can figure out a W pattern in every book that you read, all the way back to Aristotle. Some of his books, you can see this. They usually have 3 acts. And the first act is is sort of a challenge that he faced. Called back from Japan to help his ailing mother. Schooling was interrupted. His life kind of slides downhill because his mother died. His father remarries, and he has to leave the house and be on his own. So, how is he going to make it? He starts working really hard, and he gets he rents some land, and he gets some good crops going. And we get up to Act 2, which is a high point in his life. He marries, and he finds success in farming. And then Act 2 is good, and then he starts sliding down again. He got sent to the internment camp, which I misspelled, I'm sorry. And that was a low point. And then he goes, and then usually at Act 3, we end on a high note, and we go back up, where he's rebuilding and successful again. So it's something that you can think about. You don't have to start with his birth. You can start with some major challenge that he faced, or some turning point in his life. It's more interesting for the reader. So you can absorb that for a little bit. Go ahead. And then start writing. Once you've done a little research, I think almost everyone has said they've done some research. Is that true? Everyone's done some research. Good. So once you've done a little research, you start thinking of ideas of what you could write. Go ahead and start trying to make that outline. Start trying to write the first paragraph of one of the chapters. Because, as I mentioned, your writing is going to direct your research. You might think, okay, I want to write about their time in Oakland. Well, when did they live in Oakland? I don't know. So when I go to the library, I'm going to look at the city directories for Oakland and find out where they live. And I might go over there one afternoon and take a picture of their old house if it's still standing. You know, you start getting ideas, and you have to go out and do more research. And as you go, keep a list, maybe in your little book, or this is how I keep my list of what I need to do, so I don't forget. And so it's all organized, and it doesn't take me 10 times longer than it needs to. So, start with broad topics, jot down your key thoughts or words you'd like to include under each, and I would begin with the easiest topic. You know, if there's a painful memory for you, don't write about that one first. Write about a special meal that your grandmother always cooked. Write about a holiday, something, or maybe even something that you remember or you remember being told about. And then once you're all done, tackle the harder subjects, for sure. And then I'm also adding, just keep your paragraphs nice and short for the reader's sake. And then again, you're going to be working in the 1 to 2 hour chunks, right? So take a little, think about, I'm going to write about the birthday celebration that we had. I'll write about that now. And that'll take 1 or 2 hours. And then move on. Go ahead. Okay, so here's an idea. Maybe you don't have 3,000 words written, or you don't feel like you have enough information to fill up a whole book. You can add little points to make things more interesting, such as a poem written by a family member. So you have a big block of text. And you have a big block of text. You may want to break it up and put in a poem that someone wrote. Or maybe a saying. Maybe if your great-grandfather always said something to you, pull it out as a little quote. My great-aunt used to say, "A whistling girl and a crowing hen will come to no good in the end." When she felt like I wasn't acting ladylike enough, she would say that to me. And so if I were writing about her, I might put that in there. The words to a song, if they went to a church or something where there was a certain hymn, you could include the lyrics to that hymn. It just gives the reader, it breaks up the reading a little bit, and it gives the reader something interesting to think about. And of course you want to put photos and your copies of vital records and your newspaper clippings in there as well. and also a sidebar story about a pet or maybe an occupation. So the man I was talking about before, Haru, was a farmer. So maybe I would write about the farming situation in the South Bay during the early 20th century. What kind of crops did they grow? Well, he grew strawberries, and he supplied them to the Piggly Wiggly stores. You know, that's interesting. His family's going to want to know about that. Okay, so we mentioned, what if you didn't know your subject person? Like, I don't know my great-great-grandma. Or maybe you're writing about people who lived 200 years ago. So you let the record speak for you. So you may get a death certificate, you may figure out where they were born, you may find a newspaper clipping about them. Has anyone ever seen a county history book? A book about county history? You can get those in the library, or some of them are available online, and they are very useful for learning about the area. Your ancestor may or may not be in the book, but you can learn about the town that they lived in. And what I'll do is I'll go on eBay and buy postcards from the towns that they lived in, and I can use those for some of my artwork because I don't have pictures of them. Genealogical considerations, here we go. That's okay. Who will you cover? Who are you guys going to cover? Are you going to cover all the descendants of one ancestor who lived 300 years ago? Are you going to cover all the ancestors of your paternal grandfather? Or a mix? Are you going to talk about just people who have the same surname that came from a certain town? Or just one person or his parents? One set of your grandparents. I was working with a lady who was just writing, she was writing one book about one set of grandparents, and then she wrote about the others, and then she wrote a book about her parents as well. So you don't have to write about everyone at once. There's always another book to be written. You can have someone else write it, or you can write it. Don't think you have to do it all in one fell swoop. So I have a question for you, because I'm doing a lot of talking here. Who in here has a genealogy software program at home? Like Family Tree Maker, or Path, or, okay, we got one. We got one. So you may or may not want to buy one. There's some that are free online, but you may or may not want to invest the time to learn how to use them. But if you want to do some charts about how people are related to one another, it does make it easier. So a lot of times these books will have stories about the ancestors and where they lived. And then at the end, they'll have a big chart like this. So if that's something you want to do, you may want to look at getting, I can give you the name of a free software program that you can use. Otherwise, this is your project, you do what you want to do. So go ahead. I wanted to add a little point about avoiding something called presentism. That's where you as the writer stick yourself and your nosy business in your ancestor's life. And I had one recently that it was a shame that my great-grandfather had to fight for the South in the Civil War. Back then, men were expected to serve. They had no choice. Okay, well that's the writer's opinion. Whoever this man was, he may have wanted to fight for the South. Come on, don't put that judgment in there like that. Try to keep yourself out of the story if you can.